Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. Andrea Land is back. Oh, before I forget, join my Patreon. I have a $3 level and a $15 level, and you get a whole bunch of classes at the $15 level. And at the $3 level, you get the card of the day delivered to your mailbox. But I'm having a lot of fun there, and that's just something I want to grow. So Patreon /Rontowski. Someday I'll use my first name. Not now, people, not now. So Andrea Land, you loved her when we were talking about the Schumann resonance, and she is back to talk about all kinds of things, an event that you're going to want to know about on April 9th. Andrea, how are you today?
I'm great, Karen. It is so wonderful to talk to you again. I feel really privileged to get to be on another call with you and on your beautiful podcast again. I'm doing great. I feel like I've had 5 Januaries this January.
and people know we're taping this in January and it airs in March. And, this year I can't even thank God for this event you're doing in April that you told me about, because this year is like relentless. My friend Tom said it best. He said, I thought this year was going to be one big battle, but it's 1,000 little battles.
That is such a great way to describe it, because it really is. I remember on the prediction show, I talked about how humanity's adventure this year was to be the ultimate spiritual warrior, and then it was going to be more of an inner battle where you're dealing with, like you're saying, all these little things that are spurring us to heal our stuff and arrange our life differently. And humanity is really being led through this process of maturation is kind of what it feels like. But while you're in it, especially with the planets retrograde and everything at the moment, and all the momentum this year, it is a bit of chaos for sure.
It really is. And I feel like there's 2 things. This is what I feel like the year is about: identity crisis and nervous system. And I love nervous system has been added because I had Seth Lyons on, and the sound quality was so awful that podcast, and it was no way to fix it. But he was talking about moving from the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic, and I took his wife's class. I'm taking his wife's class right now, and it's the more I learn, the more I'm like, not only have Americans been living in fight or flight, but the lockdown and the pandemic sort of just took that to a new level.
Yes, it really did. And people have been in that, but it is there, I believe, for a reason and a catalyst, because like you're talking about, our physical bodies are changing, our crystalline DNA is being activated. And when I do my work, my grid work with Gaia and with the planet and celestial consciousnesses, humans kind of are the nervous system for this planet. And so if we want, the planet to be more calm, we need to work on that ourselves. And it's so interesting you bring that up, because I just did a little workshop myself on that, just giving people some tips to help calm their nervous system and their vagus nerve and reset that. So it's great. Definitely important for this year.
It's because everything is triggering. Everything is triggering, and you can see it in people, and people are there's like a underlying anger or rage right under the surface, and you can see people flipping out who usually didn't. Tell me something about our crystalline DNA changing. Is that sort of what another way to say the ascension?
Yes, it has to do with expansion and ascension. Essentially, Earth herself, Gaia, is going through a transformation from a carbon-based to a crystalline-based structure. And so that is also being activated in our own DNA. I have experienced because this happened for me about a year ago, it really kicked in. And over the last year, a lot of the physical, mental, and emotional changes that I've experienced have been tremendous physical healing, release of trauma, understanding my own origins and knowing my purpose. It's a very deep sort of transformation, but while it's happening, you can feel a little bit out of sorts and panicked. Exactly. But there's been these weird things that have happened that were very dramatic, like last April or May, there was an eclipse. I can't remember if it was the moon or the sun, but I woke up the next morning and I kid you not, I looked younger. And I went and looked in the mirror and looked at my skin. And so then I started looking up stuff about this crystalline DNA activation. And one of the things that people who are experiencing this talk about is sparkly skin. It is the strangest thing, but once it starts to happen, you look at your skin with a flashlight pointed at it, and it has glints in it like snow, that glinty sparkliness. I was joking that it looks as though I have been exotic dancing and have glitter all over me, only I can't wash it off.
That makes so much sense to me, and it's going both ways. Like there was one point where I was like, oh, I give up. I look like I'm 100. And Angela Lovell called me and was like, no. Mercury or Venus is retrograde or something. She's playing with us. And now it is going back the other way. And the glow thing, I kind of understand it, because I swear to God, I was ready to make a plastic surgery appointment. And then I was like, you don't have that much to pull up today. Wait till you're not doing the wind tunnel thing. But it's very confusing. That is happening to what we look like. And it is almost like our moods are immediately reflected in what we look like. I think Corona is about changing DNA. Whether it was, because I do kind of believe it was something man-made, like we did it, but either way, it has its purpose. It's half and half. That's what I feel like. We definitely let it loose or whatever, but coronaviruses from before were probably from the earth. So this is a weird information. It almost sounds like one of these terrible, like, have you ever been on with a quote skeptic who actually was just a quote jerk? And they ask you this question like they're open-minded, but they're not. That's what this question sounds like, but I don't mean it that way, because I love you. Yeah.
Yes.
Where do you get your information? Like, is it meditation? Is it a lot of other sources? Like, I collect a lot and then feel like what resonates in me. Or now it's getting pretty much channeled. But how do you get your information?
For me, it started and that's this is a lead in to what we're going to talk about with the Awakening Mintaka Symposium, because it started for me with a wood beetle, which I know sounds crazy, but it's a really fun story. I have been tapped in this way and had this intuition since I was a child. But as I grew up and became an adult, some of it got dampened by life things. And I was very involved in the 3D and raising my kids and all of those things. And while I would just know things and I didn't know why I knew them, I didn't really investigate, where is this coming from or how do I know these things? I just accepted that it was. But I had this transformation that happened in 2020. Right about in the middle of the summer, that first year of the panini. And that is when the channeling started happening.
When you say panini, do you mean the sandwich at Panera Bread?
Yeah.
What's the panini?
The pandemonium, the pandemic.
I'm got it. Okay.
Pandemic, so I call it other funny things.
Okay.
But it really started for me then, because it opened up an entirely new relationship between me and the crystalline grid and Gaia. So that is really where the information is coming from at this point. And it's kind of hard to explain and express sometimes, because this happened for me a little over a year ago. I was given a final knowing about myself and my role in this human experience. And I am embodying the goddess Nemesis, which is the keeper of memory.
Oh, I could use some of that. I swear to God, my memory foam mattress has a better memory than me. Oh, wow.
So it's like basically Nemesis is the keeper of all memory. So I am like a database, and I am not necessarily consciously aware of this all the time, but that's why things just come to me. And then since then, I have begun channeling whales and talking to Mintaka, and interdimensional beings have recently come on board. And so that's not an easy answer to that question, I guess.
But it makes perfect sense. And Andrea, this is what I feel like Elaine Hathaway has.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think she I should let, she's going to be on soon again, so I should let her talk about it. But I feel like she got like this information dump, and all that she knows about witchcraft, which is unbelievable details.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just I learned it from a kid. It was like it all came upon her. I'll let her tell that story when she's on, but I really feel like it was sort of like you wish and you dream. And that sounds exactly like what happened to you. Or even a better example is, there was this guy that got bumped on the head, and then all of a sudden he could play classical piano, and he had never played before. So that ability is there. That's fascinating. Now I'm going to dig into this just because I feel like I'm a little bit on the cusp of something like that happening right now. Like in my readings, I suddenly drop into this kind of channel place, which I feel insecure with, but the people getting the reading are like, no, that was what I needed to hear or what I wanted. So is it kind of something you can turn on or off, or it's just happening and you're doing dishes and you're like, oh, I got to write that down?
It's a little of both. At first, it was just kind of something that spontaneously happened. And then over the last year, I have learned how to work with it better and turn it on and off, like you're saying, so that I can just go be a person sometimes. And I'm not always having all this information flow through me. But it's sort of like I am a catalyst for other people to remember things and to remember their own origins, their own origin story. One of the services that I offer is called consciousness anchoring. And in that, I take you through a journey of expanding out your energy so that you understand what it feels like to be your true energetic size when you're not in this human form. Then we go in the Nemesis library and you get your book of consciousness. Everyone has a book of consciousness in this library. I've been told by others who've been initiated into this that the Akashic records are a section of this library. But they get a book of consciousness which contains all expressions of their consciousness going back to the origin of their birth, whatever that was and wherever it was. They and their highest self have access to that. And then we reverse that extension process and bring all of that light, that energy, that consciousness to be fully embodied in the human experience. And from there, you are able to have access to multidimensional expansion, travel, all of those things from that place of power of being fully embodied in the human experience.
So would that sort of be like, I don't know, that's such a fascinating everything there. Would that sort of be like being in touch with your superpowers, like what you're doing, what you can do, what you have abilities for?
Yes, absolutely. When people, it's only you and your highest self have access to what is in that book. So it's not like I get to look at it and tell you things. I mean, I could, but that's not the point. The point is for you to have possession of it so that you know in your embodiment that you do not need to escape the human experience to discover yourself and your superpowers. And
so you don't need to have the near death type of thing.
Exactly. It brings us basically into a state of what would be controversial to a lot of people, but that is really what it is to be a quote unquote ascended master, which is really funny because they don't like the word master or lord or any of those titles anymore. But it really is about just fully embodying your light and your consciousness in the human experience.
And that's interesting that you say they don't like the word expert. I just watched a documentary called The Problem with Experts. And it's like there's literally expert training. And that absolutely makes me nervous because sometimes people will bring me on as a paranormal expert. And I feel like that's not a good word because it's the paranormal. There's no experts. I may have collected more information than you did, but I feel like the word expert is, I don't think people, that title is interesting.
Yes. Well, part of the reason that came up for me is I had this experience with Sanat Kumara, who is, in many different teachings has been labeled as Lord Sanat Kumara, Lord of Venus, Lord of the Earth. And in this experience that I had with him, he, because I was overcome by his presence, just that extremely higher dimensional presence. And in this vision, in this very visceral experience that I was having, I fell to my knees and was crying and like bowing in front of him. And he grabbed my hand, and this is going to make me cry. He grabbed my hand, told me to please stand. He said, I want to show you something. And he turned me around, and we were standing on this podium, and then there were just thousands of people, like a stadium of people, and they were all worshiping me. And I felt what that felt like to be worshiped. And I realized that worship is the other flip side of objectification, which I experienced in many instances in my life and have gotten rid of that as part of my story. But when it happened, it felt awful. And so he said to me, do you understand now? And he said, we don't want to be worshiped. We don't want to be put on a pedestal. You are our equals. And all we want is for you to love us the way we love you.
That is something that makes me love the people I talk to that listen to this podcast, because I always, especially when I do something stupid or I'm losing my temper, I always try to lead with it, because more so in comedy, people can see a comedy set and come at you because you changed their mood. You made them happy. They can come at you with that worship, and all that leads to is falling off a pedestal. And so I feel like it's a different thing. That's that place of, this right now, this fame or this, influencer stuff. It's all based around worship and perfection. And I think that is, you got to get those errors out there. You go, I don't know how to do this. All right, let's take a break and we'll be right back. So much, Andrea. And we didn't even get to where you're here to talk about.
We'll get there.
Okay, we'll be right back, folks. Hey, everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for all of your messages, good vibes, and everything that you sent me when the boss crossed over. There's so many. I don't think I'll be able to answer them, but I want to say your love was received, and I am in great appreciation. The support really helped out at a tough time. That being said, I will not be doing the podcast in April. I'm going to take a little time off to get ahead on that. Between the move and the boss, things have been pretty chaotic. The Patreon will still be up. I'll still be taking readings. I'll still be doing comedy, but just won't have the podcast in April. We'll start with season 2, the first Friday in May. Maybe if you're not subscribed, it's a good time to subscribe so you don't forget me and I pop up on your phone. But I'll be starting season 2 in May. Apparently, I do seasons that are about 300 episodes long. So thanks, everybody. I won't be here in April. I'll see you in May. Okay, so before I get off on another tangent, tell everybody about April 9th.
Oh, right. Well, like all good stories, there's a beginning, and I want to tell it from the beginning because it makes it make more sense. April 9th, we are holding a free event. It will be a 2 to 4 hour event. It just depends on how many speakers we have. I have quite a few coming on board, and when this comes out in March, you can go to the survey link in my link tree if you would like to participate on a panel or be a presenter. But Mintaka is a planet in the Orion star system, and it was believed for a long time to have been destroyed and the civilization gone. And I went through a process in 2020 where I wound up being in contact with these beings, and the Mintakans are the largest starseed contingent on this planet. And we are here for a very important purpose, which is to hold that unconditional love frequency. And we have been doing it for around 60,000 years. So the purpose of this symposium is to give people who feel drawn to this a place to land and a place to learn more and discover more about themselves, and also heal a deep hurt that came from believing that Mintaka was destroyed and gone. So going back to the beginning, there was a huge fire here in Colorado where I am, just about 10 miles from my house. And I was outside one day with the dog in the backyard, and I was sitting down, and there was a tremendous amount of smoke, you know. So I looked at this little beetle, and I just kind of said, "Hello there." And he started walking towards me, and I thought, not my first animal communication, but that's interesting. So I kept talking to him, and he walked right up to the edge of this bench. So he got as close as he could. And so I bent down and I was talking with him, and I just kind of said, "So what are we doing here? What do we have to say?" Then all of a sudden, it was as if I was seeing the world through this bug's eyes, the way it would look to an insect, and seeing all of the crystalline fractalization of everything. And it was like I was having a mind meld with this little insect. And so I asked him why we were doing this. And he said, "Well, if you could, please put out some fruit and some water, because we're all being driven away from this fire, and we're lost, and we're very tired and hungry. And please don't kill us." And I said, "Deal. I'm a catch and release person, but if you could talk to your wasp friends, that would be great, because you stung me last week." And he said, "No problem." And I swear I have not been stung since then.
Great.
So he told me, "This is practice. You're going to be communicating with bigger things." And then the experience ended, but the psychedelic, disorienting feeling of it stayed with me for about a week. I felt like I had, I don't know, and I've never done DMT actually, but it felt like I had smoked DMT, or I had taken psychedelics, and I was just sort of in this state of seeing the world in this very crystalline, fractalized way, and just feeling kind of high. So I started actively working on channeling, and silly me, I'm thinking, "Oh, am I going to be like the three-eyed raven in Game of Thrones now?" And I'm going to be using this ability to communicate over long distances in case we lose the internet or something, you know? So then I started channeling. Well, I started listening to whales in the bathtub because I found it soothing, and I would go meditate. And then probably about a month after the beetle, I had this experience where I connected with the whales, and I was talking with the whales and channeling with the whales, and the cetaceans were telling me things. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. This must be what the beetle meant. Then in the meantime, I was in this live with Nimue, Femme Fatale Tarot, I know, mutual friend of ours.
Yes.
And in this live that she was doing, there were a bunch of us all together, and she pulled the Mintaka card from the Starseed Oracle deck, I believe. And we could all feel like our bodies started vibrating. We were overcome with this tremendous sadness. And for the first time, me and a lot of other people in there, we realized what this sadness, this grief that we had had our whole lives was about, because Mintaka was believed to be gone. And I had never resonated with the whole Atlantean wound thing, because I just had the feeling like I couldn't go home. Like wherever home was, I was never going to get to go there again. So I started investigating Mintaka, because I had actually never heard of it even. And in that process, I found some information, but most of it was very, there wasn't a whole lot. And it was all sort of a combination of like The Little Mermaid and something else silly,
kind of fractured, weird stuff.
Yeah. It just didn't feel right at all. It felt very goofy and silly, and just kind of like, okay, well, you're just telling the Little Mermaid story. And so I started investigating that more. And then one day I was in the bathtub talking to my whales. And I had this experience where suddenly I went through some sort of portal, and I was there. I was on Mintaka. I was in the water with my Mintakan family, and they were greeting me. And it was the most visceral, overwhelming. It was like being zapped into virtual reality.
Wow.
And I it's so hard to describe what it felt like, but I mean, it felt as real as walking out of your front door. So I'm on Mintaka. I'm with my family because they have pods, sort of. And they were, welcoming me, telling me how excited they were that I had made it there. And over the course of a few weeks of channeling with them, they began explaining to me, and these channelings are on my podcast from this period of time. It was October 2020. They told me that Mintaka was not gone, that it's still there, and that it was time for us to awaken and to heal that hurt, because it was no longer necessary. What happened during the Orion Wars is that other beings wanted to understand and harness the unconditional love, the harmony that exists on Mintaka. And in that process, they were going to destroy it. So what Mintakans did is they basically, as a collective, half of us came here and half of us stayed on the planet, but it ascended to a higher vibrational frequency that the other beings at the time couldn't see. So it was almost like a glamour spell, where the people involved in the Orion Wars at the time thought the planet was destroyed and it was gone. But it really had just ascended, basically, and still exists. So for the purposes of the Mintakans here, we needed to believe it was gone, or else we wouldn't have wanted to stay here.
Right.
and do our job, which part of our job, being one of the largest starseed collectives on Earth, is to hold that love frequency. And we have been holding it for thousands of years. So that is what brought me to now. Do you have any questions before I go on?
I made a couple of notes, and one of them, the question will be for later. And this is weird, but this is way back. But to me, the being in the bathtub is kind of a key. And because I take a bath every night that I don't have a show just to soak, and there's something about water that is so transforming. So I just wanted to make that note for folks. Don't be afraid to channel or, do something in the bathtub. I did have a question there. Where did it go? You keep going, and
well, I'll touch on the water as well. The bath, doing that in a bath, doing it in the shower, it is very conductive. It helps you to break through those layers of physical density that we're in, and it's also very safe and protected. You are less likely to encounter something you don't want to. And water itself has a life force and a consciousness and is its own elemental entity. And then on Mintaka, the water is its own consciousness. And
you're saying Mintaka like it's a planet, correct? It's a planet.
Yes, and it is an actual physical planet. In astronomy, Mintaka is in the Orion constellation, and it just looks like a big asteroid, from what I understand. It looks like a dead star.
Interesting. Okay, so this is a short offshoot, but I've always been told I'm one of the Orions, and it kind of fits. They're the ones that are known to have a sense of humor, and they have strange blue eyes, which I have, and they're mostly vegan. That was a weird thing. When someone told me that, I forget who, this woman told me that, and she said, look it up in this book, and it was like unbelievably like me. Like, it was almost like, are you yanking me that these are the only ones that are vegan? But there was a little thing that was funny that was kind of like, they're a little suspicious and they don't get along with everyone. Is that true, or is that just for joke purposes? Because that's me.
Well, from what Serafina, my co-host on Meow Podcast, and I have talked about before about the Orion Wars, that is pretty fitting for the Orion inhabitants. Mintaka is part of the Orion constellation, and each of the planets and stars in that system have their own people, their own identities, and part of the connection with Earth is that Earth is a place where beings from all different races, for lack of a better word, are learning how to get along with each other. Because if you look at time as being fluid and that everything is always happening, and it really isn't linear, the Orion Wars, like, as we're down here learning how to get along with each other, they're up there doing whatever they're doing. And so us learning how to get along with each other helps the greater Orion constellation of worlds that is there in that timeline or reality, help resolve their issues as well.
And folks, just remember, if you are astro projecting, the Orion constellation is the best place to find a comedy club. The stand-up there is fantastic. Okay, skip everybody else. People come from other universes just to hear the stand-up at the Orion ha-has.
I love that. There's an Orion Laugh Factory. There is.
It's the Ha-Ha Club, yes.
There's an Orion Giggles. There's
like the Laugh Shack is up in the Orion constellation.
That's fantastic.
So this is okay. So continue. Please tell me more about. I'm keeping my notes. So you're telling me more about the event. We'll hit them the second half.
Okay,
or the third half.
Okay. So for the event, the reason I decided that we needed to do this is that, the Mintakans told me, first of all, that it was time that there would be a mass awakening this year because that unconditional love frequency was coming in hard. That first 11 days of January was 7D and 8D downloads for humanity en masse. So it's very important for people to be aware of this so that they can heal that Mintakan sadness that they probably are carrying and don't even know it or understand where it comes from. So this symposium, I will have speakers talking about the integration of our energy systems that is happening with this crystalline DNA activation. We will do a live Mintaka channel where people can ask questions. I have someone coming on to talk about the physical attributes of Mintakans because it is pretty fascinating as they're a bit shape-shifty. And then we will probably have tonal healing. We'll have a panel discussion about unconditional love. And I will do a group consciousness anchoring, which is to help everyone amplify their unconditional love frequency and embody their full light and consciousness so that they can be centered and feel comfortable in the human experience.
So this is fantastic. Do you have any speakers now, or are you still building it?
I'm still building it. So if anyone hears this and they would like to participate, if you're thinking, oh yes, I am so connected to the ocean or to water or to whales, or you have been channeling Mintaka yourself, or you have anything that you would like to offer, please contact me through my link tree at Grieving Goddess. And you can click on the link for the survey and sign up to participate. There is plenty of room for more speakers, and we are really looking forward to doing this. Essentially, I just want to attract all of the Mintakans. I want people who, this resonates with them, or who are even just curious about it, to come and check it out. And you don't have to feel or believe that you have this starseed origin to come participate, because really it's just about embracing, cultivating, and embodying that unconditional love frequency.
And it's free.
Yes, it is absolutely free. I decided that I cannot charge for this. I figure anyone who participates as a speaker, they automatically get some exposure and promotion in that regard. So everyone is participating for free, and I want this to be available to people for free because for many, many years, I was gate kept out of a lot of things metaphysical because I just did not have the funds for it, and I feel a reverence for Mintaka, and I feel a reverence for this unconditional love, and I want this to be available to everyone, regardless of whether they can afford it or not.
I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to do a hard left turn here, and you know what? I'm going to stop, and we'll take the break here, and we'll do the hard left turn on the other side here. Okay, great. Hold on, everybody.
Sounds great.
Greetings to all the listeners of Paranormal Karen. This is Ryan Singer, stand-up comedian, host of Me and Paranormal You, paranormal investigator with our friend Karen, and creator of Crystallize, the photo identification app for crystals. I'm so excited because the app is available for free download on iPhone or Android now, right now. You can look up info on your favorite crystals in our 300-plus crystal guide. You can start your personal collection, keep track of your favorite crystals. You can look up info on ethical sourcing. You can go to our directory and find crystal shops near you and get directions to those shops. Oh boy, all this is free. We also have a premium section. So if you are a premium subscriber, you get unlimited photo identifications and an unlimited personal collection size. Coming soon, we're connecting you with ethically sourced vendors so you can feel good about feeling good. Download Crystallize today.
There we go. Okay. So this is a weird question. Do you believe in the negative alien agenda?
That is a tough one.
Right? Because
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you expand on it.
Okay. So my gut feeling on that, and what I'm told by my personal galactic team, some of whom are interdimensional beings, is that all things exist, and part of unity consciousness is learning to understand your own polarization internally and reconcile that and find balance between it. Unity consciousness is not everyone agreeing and being a hive mind. It's everyone being able to agree to disagree without fighting with each other. So the negative alien agenda, I do think that there are beings out there who,
play mind games.
Maybe mind games, but also just work against the collective ascension, because just like we talked about that dense energy on Meow podcast and how it's fighting to remain as Earth resonates at a higher frequency where it can no longer exist. So I think for the negative alien contingent, it's a bit the same way. There's food that this planet in its current and past existence has been feeding certain civilizations and beings, and now that we are changing, we are not going to be creating the same food for them anymore.
So it's kind of a yes, and it's kind of a yes. It's a little bit within us, but it's also a little bit of who's been eating off of us.
Yes,
which is interesting, because I feel like, and this is a little bit crazy, but I am seeing all these, shall I say, people or their crimes or whatever, where it was someone who was almost completely normal, shall we say, or normal as human beings get, all their life, and all of a sudden they have taken on murdering someone or gone completely nuts, like a break. And not a good one, not even a safe one, the one that's not safe for other people. And all I can feel, and this seems like, of course, maybe it's me or because I'm in the paranormal, I see this, but it literally looks like instantaneous possession or instantaneous mind control. And I just saw another one on TikTok where it wasn't even it was like the scariest doorbell camera ever. And a guy walked up and he's banging on the door and he keeps saying something. I can't remember. He was saying the same thing over and over. And the woman was like, I'm not answering the door. And then he starts to walk away, and the husband comes on the intercom and goes, what did you want? And he comes back up and he says, I wanted to rape and kill your wife. I have a knife with me. And
oh my gosh.
Right. And he walks away, and the police get him and arrest him. The police find him and arrest him that fast. And then they show a picture of like who he was 6 months ago and who he had become. And like his mugshot was pure evil. Like I had to turn away because I was like, don't channel whatever that is. And then they showed his picture before, and it was like someone that was just a regular guy, never had any problems. And all of a sudden it happened. And I feel like that is happening right now in to a lesser extreme level in the people that are the videos where people are going nuts. They call them Karen videos, which, as much as I hate that, that's what they call them. That's not a normal. Something is changing within mankind that I wonder if that is the negative alien agenda. Does that resonate at all with you, or is it something different?
Well, there's the thing is there's two alien collectives, and the other one isn't talked about as much. A lot of people talk about the Galactic Federation, and that has some sketchy aspects to it. But then there is Ashtar Command, which is more dedicated to the expansion and to the process that we're going through now. So with these people who are snapping like that, I think what happens is that because of these 70 and 80 downloads, what it does is it goes through and it brings up everything that isn't healed, and it makes people very open. So if someone is completely unaware, not awake to higher consciousness at all, and they're having an awakening moment or an awakening catalyst, sometimes that can go wrong, and they wind up being on the other side of it.
Maybe it taps open their shame or something. Let's be honest. Maybe not you, Andrea. You're so nice, but like we've all. I've had this conversation with Ryan Singer. We're all capable of all things. It's like,
yes,
if someone walked up and did something horrible to my dog, I can't tell you that I could control myself from actually, trying to kill that person or something. Most cases that's not happening, and maybe I could, but I'll never tell you, especially in my old age, I've learned never say never.
Right.
And maybe that is someone that was saying that, and it gets shoved down, and then in the awakening. That's a great theory. It's really interesting because this is also something that Lacey and I are going to talk about, and it's weird because Lacey's podcast is coming out before your podcast, so it's kind of like this will be a repeat, or it'll be like I have information from the future. But that's really interesting. Do you think sometimes it does leave people open to maybe possession or alien attacks?
I think that yes, it can do that, and for our lifetimes for sure, and since the advent of Christianity, and I'm not picking on Christianity, but it is just the best example to use right now. The idea of the apocalypse, the end times, this battle, right, between good and evil. We have for centuries now externalized this and imagined that it would be, angels and demons doing battle in the streets and these tiny little humans with nothing sitting down here, when in reality, what I think is happening is that it is an internal battle of our own wiring, our own angels and demons, and so as that happens, this is why it's so important for those of us who can hold this unconditional love frequency, and why I am making such an effort to help as many people as I can do that, is that it is like, it's like an armor. It's an armor that protects you from having your inner demons take over. And it allows you to release those things and integrate them within yourself so that you are a whole, complete, functioning person, rather than being one polarized half or the other.
It's such an interesting thing, because I think people do, but I don't know that they always understand how dark comedians are. And that's part of putting a light on the dark. It's part of making it like, let's all look at this. Let's all bring this in balance. It's saying what they feel shame about. So yeah, that's very interesting. When you see, there was another interesting thing I saw on TikTok, and it was, they had found like a 280. I sent it to Jessa. She was like, "Holy shit, dude! What is that?" They found an archaeological thing in Australia, and it was supposed to be 280,000 years old. That's what they gathered from it, and it was literally a carving that looked almost exactly like in the movie The Matrix, those things that flew around and attached to people's backs. It had the tentacles and it had the head, almost exactly like that, which is weird because I do think the guys that are writing The Matrix, or they're women now. They both transitioned. They're in touch with something that I think is, you have your regular Hollywood love story and whatever not in there, but they're getting glimpses of what is real. And when you see the pod, they're in the pod and the things attached to them on their back, like, was that, I know I'm making a huge jump here, but do you perceive sort of like the Matrix as we're hooked up? That's the Matrix is them, whoever sucking energy, and then this ascension or people that are into this other side is like literally dislodging those cords. Is that even a sentence or a question? I don't know.
Well, I feel like people perceive things in the way they need to at the time that they're experiencing it. And perhaps at one time I might have agreed with that, but what I have seen and what I perceive now as the crystalline grid and my connection with my celestial family of embodying planetary consciousness, we're not in pods. We're not being fed off of. I think these instances of people snapping is really just that dense energy, beings that are of that dense energy trying to get a foothold and trying to feed and create fear. So people who are vulnerable, whether because they are not awake or they have had some trauma that they haven't healed, or maybe because a lot of the Karen things, that is an amplification. These things are all amplifications of what is already in us. So if your predominant thing that needs to be healed is something dark and you haven't addressed it, and then you feel this expansion energy, it's probably going to bring out the worst in you. This is why it is so important to be working on ourselves individually and making people as mindful as possible, because once you are connected to these points on the crystalline grid, which most of us who are starseeds are, whether we're aware of it or not, that is, you're sovereign. You are not being fed off of by anything else. You are not being co-opted by anything else. You are your own individual consciousness. And that can be expressed in a million different ways.
Right. And that to me feels like, and it may be, because that may be metaphor, seeing that, but it feels like you, I don't think I'm a starseed. I think I'm an indigo, but, it's almost like, I think that is being unplugged from that, like being this, it just feels like what you're describing. Maybe it is metaphor, but it's like already unplugged, already unplugged. Yeah. And it is interesting because also there's this, so it goes with the energy of the earth, and the energy of the earth, or society, I want to say society, not the earth, went from attacking white males to now attacking middle-aged women, white women. And it's even being reflected in comedy right now, where it's like Bill Burr came out and was like, I hate white women, or something like that. And everybody is kind of, the pumpkin spice thing or whatever they want to say about women my age. And it's funny how that sort of feeds its own negative energy.
I really think that is also a reflexive pendulum swing, because the patriarchy is threatened.
Yeah. So they, and the minorities have too much momentum, or they've already been through it, so because you otherwise it if you were to do something like that, you'd fall right into the white supremacy category or something. They can already categorize you. Whereas they want it now, like anybody just can diss on white women. It doesn't matter now. It's fully accepted. But it's interesting because I believe all those things are, it's like, I'm not on Twitter anymore. I think my podcast posts up there, but it's amazing how two things. Twitter has become its own sort of negativity and its own being that people are thinking they're canceling other people through Twitter. And it's like, there's a whole world out there. Just don't look at it. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's what's really funny. Like I never was really on Twitter. I attempted early in the beginnings of the Grooving Goddess thing. And then as soon as I saw what was going on, I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And if you go online and you look at how many actual Twitter users there are compared with the world population, we give it so much more importance than it actually has. It's just this ridiculous echo chamber of bullshit.
It is. And you know what's funny? The only thing I miss is, as a comedian, it's a perfect place to throw up a joke and see what happens. And it, Instagram takes, I gotta put it on a slate and I gotta figure it out. Twitter was really great about that, but it just, when they started cheering for people dying, I was like, I can't look at it. I can't, even Facebook. Yeah. Facebook is way too interactive. So until something like TikTok, I have to put on makeup, which is a huge hurdle.
Just use a filter.
Yes, that's the other weird thing. Are we even going to know what people look like anymore? Like,
I know. I don't know. It is very weird. If I'm going to use a filter, it is usually one that is obviously, otherworldly and not what I would look like normally. And I do try to get on there without makeup and whatnot, because I feel like you're right. We need to be presenting images of real people.
Right.
So that we're not having all of these weird fantasy perceptions.
Yeah. And also there's one woman that does a very awake, sort of my side. You're the light side. Obviously, I brought in the dark side of the awakening, because I kind of feel like that's a little bit of my job too, is like, you're younger than me and you guys are kind of to bring in the light, and my age is a little bit darker, and mine is to keep an eye on the dark and just make sure. But she did such an intense news sort of update, and it's all the Bill Gates stuff, who, by the way, I should just do a podcast on Bill Gates, because I feel like, a side note, if you're buying, there's this thing called Just Eggs or Just Mayo, and it's this all natural whatever. It is not. It is purchased. It's Bill Gates makes it, and it's GMOs, and there's something very wrong.
Interesting.
So yes, because I looked at it and I was like, what is Just Eggs? And then I saw a thing on it. She was talking about it, and it's because of course they changed the labels now, so you can't really trust anything.
Right.
But I was like, why does she look so weird? And then I figured out, I think she's doing a filter so no one knows who she is. I finally was like, oh, that's why. Because I was like, this woman is really worried about looking old because the filter, she's almost fuzzy. And,
yeah, that's funny.
Which is just
funny.
A whole nother
thing. And by the way, I don't know. I'm not as much younger as you than you think, probably. I'm 52. So
well, you got 4 years on me, and you're getting that crystalline skin. So you can knock that back down to 40. So
right on.
Exactly. All right. So tell everyone where they can find you. Remind everybody about this on April 9th. And by the time you hear this, folks, the speakers will already probably be in line. You can probably look and get more information on it from Andrea's Instagram. But give us all the details you have right now.
Oh, right. Well, the Awakening Mintaka Symposium will be on April 9th. I chose that date specifically because it breaks down to a 3, which is unity. And it will be 10 a.m. to approximately 2 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And we will have lots of speakers. You can find me on all of the social medias at Grooving Goddess, GROOVING And I have a Patreon. I have a podcast on all platforms called Grooving Goddess. And then I also have a collaborative with my co-host Serafina Blackman called Meow Podcast on YouTube.
Which I had a blast on, and it was one of the most fascinating podcasts. And I actually, I had already had you on, and I grabbed you for a second interview, but I had Serafina on right away. And of course, just as fascinating, no disappointment there, I will tell you.
Well, thank you. We were so honored to have you, truly. And when you paid us that compliment, I mean, we were just like two little kids going, our hero likes us.
Oh, you are so sweet. You are sweet. Okay, everybody, check out Andrea's, we got it in the show notes. Check out her Instagram, her link tree, or whatever is there. And also, just so you know, folks, Patreon is, I didn't do it forever. It really is a neat way to keep in touch, or even just support. Like if you want to support the podcast for $3 a month and you don't even look what's coming in, just check out everybody's Patreon, because it really is a nice way to get a glimpse of what's going on there and to just support them a little bit. Like, hey, good job. Thanks for going where other people don't go.
Mm-hmm. It really is a wonderful platform.
Yeah, I'm amazed at how much I like it, and I almost think I bit off more than I can chew. I'm like, you're putting an awful lot into 1 month, and then I was like, well, I guess that's how I do things. Well, thank you so much, Andrea. Always a pleasure having you.
Well, it is always a pleasure talking to you as well, and thank you for having me on so that we could share this Awakening Mintaka event so that we can get as many people there as possible.
Absolutely. And thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media. Thank you to everybody that listens and sends the lovely emails. And if you can give me a review on Apple, iTunes, or something like that, that would help out. But everybody, thanks so much. I should actually be wherever the hell I'm moving by now. So maybe I'll see you on the road, folks. karenrontowski.com. You can sign up for my email list. Have a great day, everybody.